Novak Djokovic has a problem, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with injuries or the next generation like you were probably thinking. There's something else. Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer are the three GOATs in modern tennis, and fans would always argue which of them comes ahead of the other, and for the most part, the discussion seems never-ending. Federer's career ended with injuries, multiple surgeries and comeback attempts, and quite sadly, Rafael Nadal seems to be following that path as he has barely played any matches this year. Although Novak's elbow injury is probably not as critical as Nadal's numerous injuries, it still leaves us worried because recoveries become more difficult for players as they age. Following Djokovic's withdrawal from the Madrid Masters, many fans suggested that this was the start of his decline. No doubt we are seeing the dying embers of the Big Three era, but for Djokovic, who turns 36 soon, the problem goes deeper. This year, Djokovic has handed players such as Lorenzo Musetti and Lajovic the biggest wins of their careers.
It's the moment of his tennis career,
while merely managing to get past lesser-known players such as Ivan Gakov and Luka van Assche. Although those performances were not totally strange, since Novak usually has the habit of building up his form as the clay season progresses, what troubles many fans is his deafening silence. Apart from saying that his elbow is not in an ideal condition, he hasn't really said much. Also, since Novak is so good at studying players whom he has had a few matches against, it appears that the Serbian is somewhat finding it more to play opponents whom he has not played before. But for the sake of brevity, let's focus on the issue at hand. Novak has always had something to prove throughout his career. After the 2010 Australian Open, Roger Federer already had 16 majors. Nadal had 6 and Novak only had 1. At that point, Federer was the undisputed GOAT and Rafa just behind, and not many people backed Djokovic to surpass the duo. Against all the odds, Djokovic rewrote the history books, and just 6 years later, Djokovic already had 12 titles, compared to Rafa's 14 and Federer's 17. It was insane. In 2021, the three champs were level on 20 Grand Slam titles before Nadal and later Djokovic extended their leads. The point in particular is that Novak Djokovic has always had to prove a point throughout his career. Having set astronomical standards, the weight of expectations are slowly beginning to make an impact on him. It's almost like many fans expect him to just keep winning all the major tournaments without giving him the credit that he deserves even after he achieves such success. Ask some people, they'll tell you the GOAT status no longer has to do with the number of major titles won. Meanwhile, that seemed to be among the major criteria earlier on when Federer and Nadal were ruling the tour. Some would even say Novak hasn't won the Olympics or completed the calendar Grand Slam or broken some other record yet. The Serbian is close to 400 weeks as the world number one, which is almost double the number of weeks of Rafa spent at the top. The fact that Djokovic continues to prove many people wrong, even while nearing the end of his career, is laudable. So what should we then be expecting? I'll tell you. Novak and Rafa are certainly not where they expect themselves to be in terms of match fitness and sharpness at this stage of the season. Rafa in particular has been notorious for having injuries before the clay court season, but somehow finding a way to come back to win the big titles on the surface.
The greatest becomes even greater.
This year, he practically pulled out of hard court tournaments after his early exit at Melbourne to prepare for his best surface. Djokovic, on the other hand, has seen his priorities shift to only the biggest of titles, but this time it feels a little bit different. We are almost midway through the 2023 season, and we are yet to have all the leading men, Djokovic, Alcaraz and Nadal, in one tournament. With speculations at every turn, the favourite of the remaining Clay Masters 1000 events and the Roland Garros title is not as clear-cut as it once was. Looking at the situation, Rafa's fitness, Novak's elbow concerns and Alcaraz's form, who would you back for the big title?
So you put him above Novak, you go Rafa, Carlitos, Djokovic.
It's hard to say again.
Are you thinking something similar? Meanwhile, the anxiety continues for many of us. Previously, the GOAT stood out because of their abilities to recover from injury. For Nadal now, it appears that his medical team hasn't even gotten to the root of his hip flexor problems, while it is unclear if Djokovic will make it to Rome for the Italian Open, where he has the title to defend. Interestingly, the clay season this year couldn't be more exciting. Although tournament organisers and the tennis world in general are still recovering from the shock of not seeing either Djokovic or Nadal play at Madrid for the first time since 2002, there is an aura of positivity. Hope for the future with the next-gen players coming to the fore. Unlike the previous 15 years or so, we now have more variety of title contenders. Djokovic still remains a clear favourite on hard courts and grass, but certainly not clay. The gap is getting smaller and smaller, but we know better not to bet against his chances of making a triple career slam possible. But what are your thoughts? Is the whole situation just another speculation about fitness problems to relieve pressure from the big boys, or are they just really trying to assess their fitness to know their chances at the big events? For so long, the talk has been about the potential matchup between Djokovic and Nadal at the 2023 French Open final as the ultimate face-off for who will hold the new Grand Slam title record. But by several indications, that matchup looks a little too far-fetched at the moment. Do you see both of them meeting in the final? Well, things might very well change before June, so don't get too surprised if you see two well-oiled machines slugging it out on the dirt. Back to Novak. We already addressed the injury problems, poor form and withdrawal, but like we said earlier, his biggest problem might be the weight of expectation from him. You would rarely ever see Djokovic capitulate or implode under pressure, but when you remember the scars of the 2021 US Open, it becomes easy to see that as a possibility. Djokovic had everything on the line coming into the US Open. After a dominant season that saw him win the Australian Open, French Open and Wimbledon, he defeated the likes of Holger Rune, Kei Nishikori, Berrettini and Zverev to set up a final crunch match with Daniil Medvedev. On the brink of history and with a chance to achieve a feat worthy of guaranteeing him an immortality status in the sport, Novak buckled under the pressure in a final that became painful to watch.
Does it on his face.
Even before the match ended, he had already broken down in tears. Medvedev won the game in straight sets in a clinical display with 16 aces and conversion of 4 out of 8 break points. Meanwhile, Djokovic made a total of 46 errors and was never really given a chance to settle into the game. Considering the fact that Djokovic had put Medvedev to the sword earlier that year in the Australian Open final, not many backed the Russian to get a W over Djokovic in the most important match of his life, but it happened. It was almost like the Serbian became a victim of his own success, and that was 2 years ago. Now turning 36, Djokovic would rather have the pressure of a calendar Grand Slam or a triple career Grand Slam or most Grand Slam titles or any other record taken off his shoulder. No doubt he wants to create history, but he'll have to do it his way, and that could very well mean skipping more tournaments, being more silent at press conferences and any other thing else. Rafael Nadal turns 37 in June, and since his injury in Wimbledon last year, he has been a shadow of himself. Meanwhile, Djokovic has been left alone to battle with two burgeoning generations, the 25, 26, 27-year-olds ably led by Medvedev, Tsitsipas and Zverev, and the 19 to 21-year-olds led by Alcaraz, Rune and Sinner. That is scary. But the good news is that the defiant Serbian would have many of us rooting for him. Djokovic has excelled majorly because of his ability to reinvent himself, so don't be surprised if you see a new twist to his game once he gets back to playing. In what many fans probably see as the end of an era, and with injury concerns and loss of form, Novak might have to prove himself just one more time that he can bear the full weight of expectations on his shoulders and get the better of not just one but two generations trying to dethrone him. Having learned his lessons in 2021, Novak Djokovic will be ready to rise to the occasion. But even if he doesn't, nothing can change the fact that Novak stands alone at the top. If you think so too, by all means check out this other video.